I feel like it kind of reflects humanity in a way, in terms of the way that we have our sporting success and all the amazing emotions and that it brings out in us watching, but then you've also got the sort of the corrupt side of it, which you always have with human nature, really. So
how do we actually fund athletes that are going to the games?
Yeah, there's a range of funding. Some comes through from the International Olympic Committee and what's called Olympic Solidarity. So that comes from the broadcast rights and other partnerships, the global partnerships through IOC, and is disseminated to all the 206 Olympic countries. That's why we get some great stories of people coming from countries that wouldn't necessarily they've qualified obviously, but the finances are quite difficult. So the Olympics sort of enables that to happen. New Zealand gets its fair share of that. It's about 450,000 in last year anyway. Which kind of is a bit of a drop in the bucket really for New Zealand. I mean, we have a fairly well-developed system here, so we don't usually rely on those sources. And that system involves donations, philanthropic and commercial partners. So, the typical sponsorships that we'll start seeing or have seen in the media, talking about the Olympics and partnering with Olympians and those kind of things. The split is about 42% sourced from commercial partners and 31% from donations. And then you also have some funding comes through High Performance Sport New Zealand and from Sport New Zealand, which has its own sources and a bit of government funding in there as well. So there's a range, but obviously a lot of it comes down to the commercial aspect. Those sponsorships and things. So that's kind of centered my story a little bit on some of those opportunities for commercial sponsors.
So why would people fund them? I mean, what's in it for the sponsors?
I mean, it's a huge attention grabbing event, isn't it? I think the Olympics, you can be quite cynical about the Olympics and the IOC, and I mentioned in the story that it's an organisation that's been racked with scandal over the years, and there's vote buying, corruption about host cities and all of that stuff that goes along with it. I feel like it kind of reflects humanity in a way, in terms of the way that we have our sporting success and all the amazing emotions and that it brings out in us watching, but then you've also got the sort of the corrupt side of it, which you always have with human nature, really. So I think that for sponsors, obviously it's an attention thing. There's a huge amount of good vibes around it. There's a lot of people watching, even the cynical ones. And then if you hit with a successful athlete or a gold medalist, then there's just a lot of earned media around that, potentially sort of showcasing your brand, although there are very tight restrictions around when you can and can't display your advertising or sponsorship. Obviously, with IOC has its global partners, so they have partner and non-partner sponsors. So as a partner to the New Zealand Olympic team, you can sponsor through those channels, through the New Zealand Olympic channel. But at the games, there's a whole host of restrictions on what you can and can't post.
So what kind of options are available for the sponsors and partners of the Olympic team?
Yeah, well, there's quite a few options. Obviously, there's a bit of negotiation that goes on with the New Zealand Olympic Committee. They are quite discerning in terms of who they partner with. But the sponsors on this iteration of the games include the likes of 2 Degrees, Toyota, The Warehouse, Ryman Healthcare, My Food Bag. They are putting out black burgers. The burger buns are black, and they've got a special recipe for breakfast burgers, so you can eat them while you're watching Olympic coverage in the morning. Also spoke to Villa Maria Wines, who are actually they're a supplier for New Zealand House over in Paris at the moment, so their emphasis is really on supplying wines over there and getting in front of some of their key customers within in those overseas markets, but also within the NZ Inc. Kind of diaspora in terms of MFAT and trade commissioners and ambassadors who are going to be, having a tipple at the Paris New Zealand house, which is actually on the Champs-Élysées at the Marriott Hotel. So it sounds pretty swanky. I wouldn't mind heading over there. The head of Villa Maria and the head of the global communications are going over there to really bid in their supplier sponsorship with them. So there's also companies who use it internally. You might not see any advertising, but they're using their association with the Olympics and the ability to bring some Olympians into their organisation to really build culture or do workshops or those kind of things within their businesses. So there's quite a range of things they can do.
Are there any restrictions on what the sponsors or partners can do and the athletes can do in the Olympic Games?
There are quite a few, yeah. There's all rule books about it, but they have relaxed the restrictions a little bit since over the past 10 years. I think it is sort of in response to athletes wanting to express their own thanks or to their own sponsors, particularly with social media coming, being massively influential. Before 2016, I think it was, an athlete couldn't even say, post their own social media post saying, thanks to Nike for supporting me for this gold medal or something. Now there has been a relaxation. It's called Rule 40, and there's a few terms under there, but they do allow in certain aspects athletes to give those thank yous as long as they're not wearing their medal, they're not wearing their team uniform, they're not have the Olympic rings behind them or anything. So it's actually quite difficult for athletes to, I imagine, figure out what they can and can't do. So I actually spoke to a sports agent here in New Zealand, Kelly Evans from Cultivate, and she talked to me a little bit about those difficulties. And obviously, having a professional to help you along helps, but not all athletes have that. So I also spoke to her a little bit about the work she's done with the likes of Emma Twigg, who had an amazing story. She's coming back for her 5th Olympics this time, and she won gold in Tokyo after trying for 3 Olympics before that. So, and Zoe Hobbs, who's the first-time Olympian, she'll be running in the 100-metre sprint race, which is the marquee event of the Games. They're both clients of Cultivate. So she's seeing some really interesting stories going to come out of this, and she told me a little bit about how she advises athletes to capitalise on that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens and who really captures our imagination this time around.
To support our award-winning independent journalism, subscribe to nbr.co.nz.